There are roughly 22 million millionaires in the United States alone. That number has grown every decade for the past half-century, through recessions, market crashes, pandemics, and periods of crushing inflation. The wealth did not disappear during those events. In many cases, it expanded. And the people who held it did not do so by accident. They operated from a fundamentally different understanding of how money works, one that is rarely taught, rarely discussed, and almost never passed down to the people who need it most. The gap between the wealthy and everyone else is not primarily a gap in income. Research from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances consistently shows that income and wealth are far less correlated than most people assume. There are high earners with no wealth and modest earners with significant assets. The difference lies almost entirely in what people know, and more specifically, in what they do with what they know. So what do the wealthy actually know that most people do not? The first thing is a reframing so fundamental that it changes every financial decision that follows. The wealthy do not think about money in terms of what it can buy today. They think about it in terms of what it can produce tomorrow. This is not a mindset platitude. It is a measurable behavioral difference documented by researchers at Harvard Business School studying the financial decision-making of high net worth individuals versus middle-income earners. When presented with discretionary income, the two groups consistently made different choices, not because one group was more disciplined, but because they were optimizing for entirely different outcomes. One group asked, "What do I want?" The other asked, "What will this become?" That shift in question changes everything. A $10,000 sum looks different when it is seen as a future asset rather than a present option. A car payment looks different when the true cost, including the opportunity cost of the capital tied up in a depreciating vehicle, is calculated honestly. The wealthy do not live without enjoyment. They simply price things differently. The second thing the wealthy know is the difference between an asset and a liability. And they apply that distinction with a precision that most financial education never provides. An asset puts money into a pocket. A liability takes money out. This framework, examined extensively in behavioral economics research and popularized in financial literacy literature, sounds simple, but the implications are radical. A primary residence, for most of its owners, is a liability. It consumes maintenance costs, property taxes, insurance, and mortgage interest. A rental property generating income above its costs is an asset. Most people spend their entire lives accumulating liabilities while believing they are building wealth. The wealthy systematically prioritize assets, not because they have more money to begin with, but because they have internalized a framework for evaluating every financial decision through that lens first. Research from Thomas Stanley and William Danko, whose decades-long study of American millionaires produced findings that contradicted nearly every popular assumption about wealth, found that the majority of millionaires in the United States do not drive luxury cars, do not live in the most expensive neighborhoods, and do not spend conspicuously. They accumulate, quietly, consistently, through assets. The third thing is an understanding of leverage that most people never encounter. Leverage, in its simplest form, means using other people's money to build wealth. This is not a controversial idea among the wealthy. It is a foundational tool. A real estate investor who uses a bank loan to acquire a property worth 5 times their initial investment and earns rental income on the full value while only having deployed a fraction of their own capital is using leverage. A business owner who borrows to expand operations and earns returns on the full enterprise value is using leverage. The returns in both cases are calculated not on the money borrowed, but on the total asset. Most ordinary earners are taught to fear debt in all its forms, and consumer debt, credit card balances, personal loans, car financing, absolutely warrants caution. But the Federal Reserve's data on wealth distribution reveals something striking. The wealthiest decile of Americans holds the largest amounts of debt in absolute terms, not because they are financially reckless, because they understand that not all debt is the same and that productive leverage, deployed correctly, multiplies outcomes. The fourth thing is tax knowledge. Not tax avoidance in the aggressive sense, but a clear-eyed understanding of how the tax code is structured and how different types of income are treated differently. A salaried worker earning $100,000 pays a significantly higher effective tax rate than an investor earning the same amount through long-term capital gains. A business owner who structures income through an entity can access deductions that a wage earner cannot. The Tax Policy Center and multiple independent analyses have confirmed that effective tax rates in the United States are not simply a function of income level. They are a function of income type and structure. The wealthy know this. Many of them build their entire financial architecture around it. And the knowledge gap between those who understand tax strategy and those who do not compounds, exactly like interest, over decades. The fifth thing is patience applied as a strategy. Not passive waiting, but the deliberate decision to allow time to do the work that effort alone cannot. Studies from Dalbar, an independent financial research firm, consistently show that the average individual investor significantly underperforms the market, not because the market did not deliver returns, but because they moved in and out of investments reactively. They bought when things felt safe and sold when things felt dangerous. The market did not fail them. Their relationship with time did. The wealthy, by and large, do not try to time markets. They enter them and remain. Wealth management research from J.P. Morgan Asset Management tracking investor behavior over multi-decade periods found that missing just the 10 best trading days in any given decade, often days that occur during the most volatile and frightening periods, cut long-term returns by more than half. The wealthy stayed, and staying more than any sophisticated strategy was what made the difference. The sixth thing is a network built around information, not just affiliation. The people the wealthy surround themselves with are not simply pleasant company. They are sources of financial intelligence, deal flow, tax strategies, investment opportunities, business frameworks. Research from the Brookings Institution examining social capital and economic mobility found that access to high-information networks was one of the strongest predictors of upward financial movement. The knowledge that circulates in those networks is not secret, but it is unequally distributed, and that distribution is not random. It follows existing wealth. What this means is that financial knowledge is not just self-reinforcing through behavior. It is self-reinforcing through access. People who know more connect with others who know more. The conversations that happen in those circles accelerate the accumulation of insight that translates directly into better financial outcomes. None of these things, the asset versus liability framework, the productive use of leverage, the tax strategy, the patience, the network, require a trust fund or an inheritance to access. They require information, and information, once acquired, changes behavior permanently. If this kind of financial clarity is the kind that most people never encounter in school, in their families, or in the conversations around them, then the most valuable thing that can be done with it is to pass it on. Sharing this video costs nothing, but for the person who watches it and internalizes even one of these frameworks, the financial trajectory of their life may shift in a direction that compounds quietly for decades. A like or a subscription is what keeps this education reaching the people who need it most. There are 22 million millionaires in the United States alone. The number keeps growing. And the distance between those who are building wealth and those who are not has very little to do with luck, and almost everything to do with what they know. Now you know it too.